My name is Carrie Ginger, and your host of the Bytable podcast, Know Better, Live Best. Today's guest is Shawna Coronado. Shawna is an author, photographer, and media host focused on anti-inflammatory lifestyle, organic gardening, and whole food cooking. She has written 7 books, and her photographs and personal story have been seen in many international women's magazines and home and garden magazines. Listen as we discuss Shawna's advice for living an anti-inflammatory lifestyle and her latest book, Stacked with Flavor, an anti-inflammatory cookbook with dairy-free, grain-free, and low-sugar recipes. Know Better, Live Best is dedicated to supporting food and health literacy in people of all ages. Our mission is to cut through the misinformation surrounding food, health, and nutrition because we believe that when people know better, they can make the right choices and live their best lives. We are presented by Bytable Foods. They use blockchain and Internet of Things technology to build traceable, transparent food systems because it shouldn't take an investigative journalist to find out where food comes from. Hello, I'm here with Shawna Coronado, who is an author of 6 books, a photographer, gardener, media host. I could probably go on and on about this, I'm sure, with your background. Hi, Shawna. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It is early morning in Arizona here. But here's the thing. I'm up at like 4 o'clock every morning. So, morning is, and I'm one of those weird people who I don't even have an alarm, but boom, I'm awake. And there you have it. It's a curse and a blessing both.
See, I think I would like to have that curse and a blessing. So I'm like pulling myself out of bed. It's not as early morning for me as it is for you. So I'm thankful for that. But I did still wake up to an alarm to get me out of bed.
Well, here we are. Thanks for having me on the show. I love your show. I think you're really helping people. And that's so important to me.
Yes, that is definitely what we're trying to do because I think there's so many people out there that want to care about their food and their lifestyle, and maybe they just don't know how to go about that. So you're here to help us with that too. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of background about you?
Well, as you know, I'm a book author, but how that all started was in the gardening world. So I had a front lawn vegetable garden. I had a backyard behind the fence garden that I got fined for. I didn't get arrested for gardening, but almost everything happened in this. And I had this drama that had lasted over 10 years that was all about how to grow food for people. You know, I wanted to grow organic. I wanted to grow a lot of food. I wanted to help people. And I wanted to really inspire people to live outdoors and live well. That was my whole goal. And it was a lovely goal. And until 2015, when I had planted my 3,000 vegetables in my front lawn vegetable garden. And by the way, if anyone wants to see the garden, you can go look at it. Go to my website, shawnacoronado.com, and just search vegetable garden. You can see all of them. But the issue was after I planted my 3,000 vegetables, I could barely move. And we're not talking normal barely move. I mean, suddenly I was like hunched over. I'm bending below the camera here. I was just really, really in tremendous pain. I couldn't sleep. I could barely walk. When I walked, I had to take these shuffly little steps. And I was convinced that perhaps I had some sort of injury, like a muscle injury. So local to where I lived was a health expert who was a doctor that specialized in osteo, but he was really a sports medicine guy. And I'm like, well, gardening is kind of athletic, so perhaps I should go. So I went into him. He was 6'8", so he's this huge guy, and kind of intimidating. Looks down at you and orders you to do stuff. And when he diagnosed me, he's like, I can diagnose you almost without an x-ray. I think you have osteoarthritis. And I'm like, no, get out. I have something that is much less serious than that. And he's like, okay, well, look at the x-rays. So we looked at the x-rays. And they, of course, showed that I have severe spinal osteoarthritis. There is no cure for this. My neck is malformed. There will be no change in this. And in fact, really, you go down. as I get older, this is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And so when he showed the proof of the x-ray, I was blown away, like totally, how am I going to deal with this? This is going to affect my career. I've been hefting 50-pound bags over my shoulder. I can no longer do any of this. I didn't even know, like my mind was so blown, I didn't know what to do. And the first thing he said was, well, there is a cure. The cure is pain therapy. And I'm like, wait, what is pain therapy exactly? And he's like, oh, it's opioids. And I'm like, no. That is like all of that I've been writing about for the past 10 years and talking about is wellness and gardening and how wellness is truly affected by the addictions that we have, including opioids. And I'm like, no. This is not what I'm going to do. And he's like, well, that's your only cure. And I realized if I had been a delicate wallflower, a sweet little old lady, maybe, that I would have said, okay, because he's this big, intimidating guy, that's an authority and knows what he's talking about. So, where did that leave me? So I'm like, well, let's talk about alternatives to opioids. What else is there? And he's like, well, not much really. We could put you in physical therapy. I'm like, well, let's do that. And so I did go to physical therapy and I relearned how to garden, how to live, how to do my lifestyle from a physical perspective. And then the one thing he said, and this is gold, everyone should hear this. I want you to hear this. It's so important. Walk every day. And we don't mean get up off the couch and walk to the front door or out to the mailbox. Because that's what the typical American, that's it for the average American, okay? We're talking 1 hour of walking every single day. Now, you have to imagine that 1 hour of walking at that time, to me, without pain meds, was like unbelievably difficult. I could barely walk. Remember the little shuffly steps I took? I'm like, there's no way that I can possibly do this. So I'm at an indoor track because I was looking for flat, solid ground because uneven ground actually hurt me. So I had to find a flat place. I went to an indoor track. I started walking around. I'm sobbing on the track. Like I'm crying. It hurts so bad. I'm like, surely this can't be good for me. And that's the moment that I remembered. Remember, you always have to hit bottom before you realize that there's something else. And that was, I'm sobbing publicly, crying on this track, thinking it's the end of my life. And I remembered that several years ago, my daughter has a severe form of hypothyroidism, and we had taken her into a nutritionist. Now, that sweet little nutritionist is a wonderful lady. And she said to me, she's like, if everyone consumed an anti-inflammatory diet, the entire world would be different right now because there would be less diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, gut problems, fibromyalgia. And she's listing all these things that are, of course, inflammatory conditions. And I was like, yeah, that's a load of bull. No, food is not about that. I need a pill. Where's my pill? And I'm arguing with her on the track while I'm crying because I called her right there and said, I'm at the end of my rope. What do I do? She's like, okay, I want you to stop arguing with me. You need to get in your car right now. I will cancel all my appointments and you are coming to my place right now and I'm going to change your life forever. And when she said that, I was like, you are full of crap. I actually said that to her. No, you are full of crap, but I am desperate. I don't know what else to do. And so I get there. She puts me on an anti-inflammatory diet. And she insists that she's like, first of all, just go for 1 week, but we're going to take this for 30 days. We're going to go on this anti-inflammatory journey together, young lady, and you are going to feel better at the end of it. And I'm like, in 30 days, give me a break with food. No, it's not going to happen. So the basic of the diet that she prescribed me at that time was no grain, no dairy, no sugar. That means no booze. That means no corn. Because for some reason, corn is in everything. And, no corn, no soy, no any other grain that would be like wheat, no, let's get it clear. People don't understand what a grain is. They think corn is a vegetable and it's okay. It's not, so anyway, I have to go on this diet. So the first day I send her an email and I basically say, I hate you. This is never going to work. Second day, same thing. And I'm literally sending this poor woman notes that say, I dislike you. This is never going to work. I hate this, and I was like bitching and groaning the entire way. Day 4 happens. For the first time ever that summer after all the pain, I slept through the night. Day 4. Day 5, I felt even better. Day 6, I felt even better. By day 30 of the diet, by the way, on day 6, I phoned her and said, I'm so sorry. I love you. You're the best thing on me. I'm like, oh God. I was really dramatically improved. I would say at the end of that 6th day, I was 40% less pain and felt like $1 million comparatively, to what I was going through. Could walk again, could sleep again. I'm like, oh my Lord, why did I not listen to you? And she's like, I know. So funny. So that was the beginning of the journey. And I stayed on it for the 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, I felt really dizzy. Woo! Oh Lord, I'm going to have a car wreck. Like that dizzy. I just couldn't think straight. I went into the doctor to find out what was wrong with me. And he took my blood pressure and everything. And he's like, Say, your blood pressure is normal now. What are you doing differently? I'm like, I'm on this diet and I'm walking 1 hour every day. He's like, doctor says to eat right and get exercise. You just lowered your blood pressure. So this was in 2015. I have not gone back on blood pressure meds since 2015, right? I feel so good. Every month, it was something different and wonderful that happened to me. 3 months in, another miracle happened. So I'm still walking 1 hour every day, still have the same diet, the whole thing. What happened was suddenly food tasted different. And I can't put a finger on how to describe it except to say that boxed foods were no longer in my life. Right? Because no grain, no dairy, no sugar means that you have to eat fresh vegetables and whole foods and olive oil and things that are good for you, And suddenly this big changeover had happened. I'm sitting at the dinner table with my husband and I'm like, oh my God, this tastes so good. And I'm momming. And he's like, it's food, it doesn't taste good. And remember, he's not on my diet. It's just me, who's experiencing this. And then every meal thereafter tasted better. Things like arugula, which I always hated before, tasted yummy. Curry tasted delicious. Things were amazing. And I realized that this transitional experience was about really rediscovering what food is supposed to be and what it's all about. It is not supposed to be a packaged box filled with a bunch of crap. It is supposed to be whole food and yummy. And food became this happy experience for me. So the critical part of the story is the 4 days. Because if you have a food sensitivity, it's been scientifically proven it takes you at least 4 days to work it out of your system. So quite frequently, if you're having an allergic reaction on Monday, it can even skip a couple days and hit you on day 4. It can. So allergies and food sensitivities can affect you for more than that. Everybody's like, well, I just had corn and it didn't bother me. And then 3 days later they hurt. And they're like, but the corn was 3 days ago. So, no, that's not how it works. You have this 4-day range. So once I was done with my first 30 days of really an elimination diet, we then gradually reintroduced food, 1 every 4 days. So dairy is never going to be in my life. I have butter occasionally because butter doesn't seem to bother me, but I found that out by reintroducing, doing the cycle of every 4 days. And butter is not so bad. but butter might kick you in the hiney, so it depends on who you are and I guess what I'm saying is so many people right now are on either the keto or the paleo or the grapefruit juice diet, give me a break, or the whatever diet that they're on for weight loss. And what happens is their body doesn't get everything it needs. And the keto isn't the solution for every single person on earth. So when I wrote my cookbook, which is also a food plan, my focus was on anti-inflammatory foods as a whole. And then your nutritionist or your doctor can guide you on the right steps for your particular body. And that's what I did was I took an anti-inflammatory diet and customized it over many, many months to what fits. And so that's really the story of me being diagnosed, the food that I eat now, and how I'm moving forward. And it's been years. I will never get off of this food plan because I feel like $1,000,000. It's important.
I can relate to so many things that you've said. Just the 4 days, I know that if I've had a bad weekend or a bad week and I go back to my normal way of eating, which I've, searched high and low anti-inflammatory foods and diets because of my knees and my back and many other things. And turns out brain fog apparently is one of those areas that affect you. If you have inflammation, it can be inflammation in your brain. And after 4 days, and I can even say like 5, just the bloating goes down. That's not even what I was attempting for. Just your face looks better. Your even like my eyes, around my eyes, it's amazing. And I just have more energy. And I actually feel like I'm more pleasant as well to be around.
Exactly. Well, along those lines, remember I said the high blood pressure went away. Well, the other thing is I totally reversed menopause. In 2015, I was diagnosed menopausal. And then within a month, it was, I think, 2 months of the diet, then it reversed itself. Now, this isn't permanent, of course, but I'm now getting back into it again. But what I discovered is that hot flashes in particular. Okay, I'll tell you when I'm going to confess all my dirty sins, my dirty laundry. The only time I have a hot flash is when I have either a super sweet margarita, we're talking a margarita, not a little margarita, like a margarita, or I have 2 cocktails of any sort. And why? Because that's all sugar. That affects your body. Even if it says, don't be fooled by the skinny sign. Yeah, it might have less calories overall, but it still triggers sugar reactions in your body. So the single biggest thing that changed my life is no sugar. Truly. That makes a difference. So I have, and everybody's like, well, what cocktail can I have? I know it's true. Beer and wine, no. But wine's good for you. Yes, but it has so much fermentation and sugars in it that it will trigger you. I've talked to hundreds of people, and they've all experienced the same thing with beer and wine. Okay, so my feeling is that you should rarely have those, if ever. But if you're talking, but I can drink vodka, so it's all good. No, vodka and gin is clear and is processed. So if you are going out and everyone's having a cocktail and you feel very left out, you could have a gin and soda or a vodka and soda. And that doesn't trigger me doesn't trigger me at all. It's not a problem. And you find that out, remember, by experimentation. And so I do have an occasional cocktail. It's not the end of the world, and everything's, let me tell you, no dairy, no grains. People are like to me, I can't eat cheese? My God, what am I going to do? It's so much drama for them. And I'm like, no, going to prison is hard. Having your arm cut off for medical reasons, that's hard. Really, it is. Going on a diet for your health and not eating cheese, really, you got this. I mean, come on, you can do it. And so this is what I'm cheering people on for, is that this isn't hard. This is a choice that you make in order to feel better every single day. Imagine no to low chronic pain, So half of America is on pain medication right now. 243 million prescriptions every year are written for opioids. You cannot tell me that all of that is needed. Some people absolutely need it. Other people, no. So my theory here is that we need to reduce the amount of pain meds we have naturally by the way that we eat. And doing that, we will be able to think more clearly. And less brain fog and thinking clearly makes smarter decisions, both for your life and for your community. So maybe we won't be in the hot political mess we are if everyone ate better. Don't know, but I'd like to find out.
I was one of those people you talked about that was like, I can't give up dairy. And this was like years ago. I love dairy, cheese. I wasn't really much of a milk drinker, but it was more cheese, I think, than anything. And I rarely have it now, even when I'm having a bad week. I'm making food choices. So I'm really busy. I didn't prep well, which is totally on me because you can be busy and eat really well. That's my fault. But I still don't sprinkle cheese on things. I never did really go back to that. And I used to love cheese. And now I can take it or leave it. And it's also helped because my husband's like, oh, no, we don't need cheese. So he doesn't put it on anything either. And he's not on an anti-inflammatory diet. But like your taste buds change. I remember you talked about how food tastes different. I remember stopping by my mom's one time to pick up my boys. And she had a pan of roasted vegetables. I used like asparagus and Brussels sprouts and I can't remember what else was on it. I was just picking from the pan and eating because I was in a hurry. And it just tasted so good. I'm like, who walks in and sees asparagus and Brussels sprouts? And it's just like, yes, food. But it tasted so good to me because that is what I was used to eating. And that's what my body craved, not the cheese.
Exactly. And the truth is that the more sugar you eat, the more you crave. And you know this if you've ever tested this out, because I fell off the wagon 2 years ago. Look at me. I can actually remember the exact date. On March 3rd, 19, or, I totally understand. But you fall off the wagon and it spirals out of control because I would have some sugar and then I'm like, oh, well, I'm fine. So I feel okay. So tomorrow I'll have sugar. Then 4 days later, I'm in bed for 72 hours, unable to move, in total pain, locked up. Well, it's because I was not mindful. And, people ask me, well, they're like, it's such a battle every day. And okay, I can't disagree with you on that. You have to be mindful, but in being mindful about your food, you start to be mindful about the rest of your life. It's quite interesting what's happened. So scientific studies have proven that if you do a food plan and you simultaneously do an exercise plan, you are more likely to stay on both. That it's the mindfulness. When you're not eating, you have to do something. So if you're sitting on the couch, not exercising or doing anything, then it's easy to slip. But you had breakfast and then, now I have to go do my walk. So I'm going to go do my walk. You come back, you do your work for a while. Then you have lunch and you're like, oh, don't want to eat crappy food because I walked this morning and look at me. I'm so proud, And then it's this cycle of ever continuing mindfulness, staying together, staying on your plan. And then the plan stops becoming a plan. It starts becoming a way of life. And that's where I am right now.
It's just the way you eat. That's just what you eat.
Yeah. And everyone's like, but your husband, he does. My husband is an overweight man. Anyone who knows him loves him. He's adorable. He refuses to eat anything healthy. If it's healthy, my God. If it's green, no way. I get it. I don't agree with it. But what I can tell you is if he walks into the house and he sees my face, he'll look at my face and he'll say, what did you eat today? You're not looking right. Are you okay? Like his concern for me is centered around, he knows that food affects me. And yet he still refuses to eat anything but hamburgers and pizza. This, in our marriage, we've been married 20 years. So it came down to a choice. And the choice was, I can leave him or I can stay. There was no changing him about food, okay? So do I let myself live without a healthy diet because he's not interested in joining me? And I decided no, that being healthy is a personal choice. And I want to live with less pain. I want to live healthy. And to do this, I have to make the right decisions for myself. If he doesn't want to come along with me on the journey, then that's his problem, not mine. So for all of you at home that's struggling with this, I get it. I've lived it. I really understand, but I've still made the choice that healthy is better.
And it's a choice you have to make daily because you do have setbacks, and you admitted that you do. It's not easy to do all of the time, but once you're in that mode, it does get easier each day. And also it goes back to, you may not have physical symptoms yet of the typical American diet, but that doesn't mean there's not something already going on. And actually, I guarantee there's something going on in your body. So it's like, oh, if you could just start before you start getting symptoms. Like, I waited till I had symptoms to start caring about this, but I had things going on long before the symptoms showed up in my body, unfortunately.
Well, everyone's like, oh, we don't know what causes cancer. And then everyone's getting cancer and they're like, but we don't know what causes it. And I'm like, well, if you ate healthy for the last 5 years, do you think that it might have improved your chances to not catch cancer, as it were? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, then why aren't we doing it? Why isn't the federal government encouraging it? Why aren't doctors? My doctor gave me 2 choices: opioids and physical therapy. Food was not amongst those choices. Nothing about food, nothing at all. And so I feel like I accidentally fell into this, almost desperately fell into this, because I just happened to remember this nutritionist. And by the way, the nutritionist's name is Deepa Deshmukh. She's a wonderful, wonderful, sweet woman who tolerated my hateful emails and then has now become one of my best friends. I truly love her so much. But because she faces this same reaction every single day, people are very hateful when you tell them you need to change your diet. So I want to talk real quick about something that I face too, and it happens a lot with men specifically, although women are also a part of this, but especially so for all of you that have husbands that are, all you men out there, here's what happens. You are diagnosed with diabetes. You go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, you have to go to a dietitian and they will prescribe the right food for you to eat. So they get this diet in hand and they bring it home, and in their mind it tastes super bland, like there's no flavor in it whatsoever. Now the diet is probably an adaptation of a whole food diet of one type or another, and I'm very, very pro the Mediterranean diet, for instance. In fact, my food plan is a variation of that, but with no grain and dairy involved, but it's really a lot of whole foods. And so people are given this and they're like, oh, broccoli with nothing on it. Blah, blah, I can't eat this. What am I going to do? Well, I think that even dietitian and nutritionists are not being educated very well about how to increase flavor. And that became my goal, was to teach people how to eat well, because you can increase flavor in ways that are surprising. So one of the problems is all of our food that is boxed has added fat, it has added sugar, it has added salt, all of those things. So your body gets used to having this hyper tastiness always happening. And in Europe, like my daughter lived in Rome for 3 years. So I went over to Rome and I ate all the food, and by the way, I also ate some of the food I wouldn't eat in the United States, that like grains, didn't have a problem at all. That's very telling, because it's not just the grain, it's what's inside the grain, how it's grown, the chemicals it's grown with and all that. It does have an effect on your body, clearly. I mean, I'm an example of that. But at any rate, I go to Rome, and Italian cuisine is not what Americans think Italian cuisine is, because we were raised with ravioli and, like canned Italian food, and you go to the fancy Olive Garden and everything is hyper flavored. And so we think that that's Italian, but in Italy, they actually eat without flavor. They want a squash, for example. I'll use her roommate as an example. I went in, her roommate's like, oh, we're making a sauce from pumpkin today. And I'm like, what? You can make a sauce from pumpkin? And she showed me how you melt down pumpkin from a pumpkin, not from a can. And you use a little olive oil, a little salt and pepper, and that is the entire dish. There's no heavy oregano. There's no heavy basil, all of these things that we assume are Italian. She's like, now taste that. And the flavor was to die for, but it was not that ultra flavored everything that we Americans associate, that we Americans associate with Italian food. And that's because we all grew up with boxed Italian food and canned spaghetti and think that's what it's all about. So changing people's image about what food is and how to flavor it is difficult when they're used to eating all that ultra processed, ultra flavored stuff. So what I'm suggesting is that you add the flavor back in. I have 3 ways I like to do that. So I'll give you my secret tips for how you add flavor. The first is to roast your vegetables. Now, when I was a kid, roasted vegetable meant that you first boiled your broccoli, then you put it in a roasting pan, then you smothered it with cheese, and then you smothered it with crackers. Okay, then you baked that until it was mush. And that was the only broccoli I ever had as a child. And that is not a vegetable, my friends. That's a processed food. That's what that is. And so imagine this instead, that you have 1 pound of broccoli and you have 1 tablespoon of a seasoning mix and a little olive oil. You drizzle a little olive oil, you dump the tablespoon or even 2, if you like more flavor, onto the vegetables and you roast them for a half hour at 350 or 400. My goodness. It is so flavorful. And when you roast it until it's blackened on the edges, which sounds like you burnt it, it's even better because it's sugared. The sugar comes out of it. So then the flavor, instead of eating honey or sugar or something, you're eating these vegetables that are to die for, and it's adding that seasoning mix plus roasting that really makes a difference. So I actually gave you 2 tips there, because that making your own seasoning mix. I was a big fan of like Slap Ya Mama seasoning mix. If you've ever had Slap Ya Mama, it's like really spicy, whoop, whoop, and gets you right in the face. They have all kinds of, go to any grocery store, they have all these pre-made seasoning mixes. I want you to read the labels, because boy, was I shocked when I started reading labels and seeing the proof that having something that is more flavorful in the United States is associated with all the chemicals and preservatives and additives, and you don't have to have that. So I started making my own seasoning mixes. So you're roasting the vegetables, you're making your own seasoning mixes when you do it. And then the other thing is when you have meats, you're searing them. So that it can apply to poultry also, but it's particularly effective with pork and beef. Now, I don't do a lot of beef. I don't recommend red meat heavily. I prefer you have pork, poultry, eggs. If you're going to do meats, that you do them without the red meat, and you do them, if possible, organically. And I know that's not possible for everyone, but having lower chemicals and higher flavor, which happens with searing, because you're searing in the flavor, really truly makes a difference. So if you're put on a diabetic diet, or you decide to go on the keto or the paleo, or you decide to change things up where suddenly you're not eating grains or packaged goods, you're gluten-free in one form or another, then increasing the flavor that goes into the cooking process will change your life, because it's easier to stay on a diet that is a whole food diet when everything tastes delicious.
And I agree. And this is a perfect time to we'll go back into your book, Stacked with Flavor. When I was reading through your book, first of all, the photographs in there, it's just, how do you not want to eat that? But I was drawn to your spice mixes that you were adding into bowls. Like I said, I'm like, that's what I've been needing, because I feel like I get in a rut. Like I currently have veggies I prepped yesterday, and I was just like, I don't know what to do with these. I need to cook them up, but I'm not, like, I'm in the spice world. I have a hard time. But I'm really excited because I have a lot of the spices you talked about that I can put together on those vegetables later today when I just, pop them in the oven. So I'm really excited about that. And I want the listeners to hear how it really just seemed easy.
It's super easy. It takes you 5 minutes of blah, 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 blah. Okay, so when I'm making the spice mixes, again, I try to buy organic. This is surprisingly inexpensive now. You can go to, and I hate to name drop any brand, but you could go to Walmart. You could go to the cheapest grocery store ever, and now almost all of them have a line of organic spices that cost hardly anything, and they're a little bit above the rest of the spice. Totally worth the investment to do it. I mean, to get the dried goods that are organic. So what my favorite mix in the whole book is ranch seasoning mix. And when I first had, I know it sounds funny, but when I first had it outside of I grew up with the little packages of ranch seasoning mix, and we would mix it with dairy, and the first time it had so much flavor. My God, it was so much better than the other stuff. And in fact, I like a lot of dill. So the recipe has dill in it. I actually add extra dill because I'm a heavy dill person. People always say, well, how do you then make ranch seasoning dressing? And I have a recipe in the book, but what you do is you get a soy-free mayo. I want you to look that up, because mayo, almost all of the dressings out there have soy in them. So as a part of the soy-free push, I find a soy-free mayo, or you could make it yourself if you want to go that far. I add a little almond milk to that so that it's runnier, if you will, and then mix in my pre-made ranch seasoning. It is so good. So delicious. It has no dairy in it whatsoever. And that gives me that dairy feel, but I don't have the dairy. But what I really like the ranch seasoning mix on is I put it on poultry. I'll have a chicken, or if you really want to go cheap, if you want to save money, just yesterday I went out and got chicken thighs. You could get drumsticks, a small package if you're just a person on your own, and I brush it with olive oil. You could also use avocado oil, a good one. And then I want you to use non-saturated oils when you're using them, because saturated are very bad they're clogging your arteries. It's very bad for you. And so then I sprinkle over a tablespoon or two of my ranch seasoning mix, and then I bake it in the oven for a half hour. I mean, that's like my formula for everything. 1 tablespoon of spice seasoning mix and a pound of whatever with a little olive oil, over and over and over. So you could be eating that same ranch seasoning mix every single day. I mean, that's boring. So, even though it's good, you don't want to do that. So that's why there's more than one seasoning mix in the cookbook, because there's curry, there's Italian seasoning mix and Mediterranean seasoning mix, and all these different, I have Jamaican seasoning mix. I have all these different things. And so we still have chicken a lot, but I mix up the flavors, and the flavor then becomes the important thing of I can't wait. I'm like, oh, it's 4:30. I'm like an 80-year-old woman. It's 4:30. I'm so hungry for that chicken, and I have it sitting out in the fridge ready for me. I'm like, oh, it's going to taste so good. Like, in my mind, I'm already pre-eating this deliciousness, and I can't wait for dinner. Where before I used to just chew a lot, and now I really enjoy my food. So making that connection, not just between wellness and whole foods, but between wellness and flavor that is authentic and good, can make or break your future, because it enables you to stay on a food plan way longer, because you're happier. You're happier inside your soul when you're eating food that is delicious.
I agree. And I think you just made my meal prep a whole lot easier too, because you're right. You can eat some of the same foods, but it tastes different because of the spices. And that's always a part I struggled with. And the ranch one definitely stood out to me the most. So I think it's funny you brought it up. I'm like, that's the first one I'm trying to put together because it makes it so much easier. So you talked about obviously the food and organics important to you, and it's not always possible, but if you can, and you talk about walking about an hour a day if possible. Have you made any other lifestyle changes, or are those the two main ones that has really helped you out with your osteoarthritis?
I'd say that's the big two. The big two. And so everyone's like, oh, you have to do hundreds of different things. My whole life is going to be different. My goodness. No. Walk every day and do your best to eat well. Then secondary to that, I try to do yoga. I think that yoga is very important if you can. I'm not as faithful to yoga every day, and I can't, in this process, I'm a professional writer, not a millionaire. So I can't afford to go take classes and to do all this stuff, so I have to find a way to do all of this in a budget. So there are two online things I've done to help me get started and stay on. The first is, for the first year, I used an online food tracking tool, an app. I'm not going to recommend one app over another because there's so many, but it's like you just search diet apps, if you will. And the diet app, will help you track your food every day. And the reason that was very important for me at first was I really didn't understand what I was eating before and what I was eating after the change. I needed to understand what my daily habits were. And that dietary app made a big difference. I mean, it helped me understand what my food habits are. I no longer use the app because it's ingrained in me now. It's just here's my habits every day, and I know what they are. And if I vary from them, then I know that also, so that there's no need for me to track them. And mostly too, because I'm not tracking to lose weight. And I think that's very important to discuss. Before I went on this diet, I was eating 1,200 calories a day. So as a part of what I do, I did a lot of television. I've been a QVC lady. I was on TV regularly. I had, all the photographic expeditions. Like I took all the pictures in my book, but I also, take pictures everywhere I go, and I have them taken of me. So the whole issue of being on camera was something, as a woman, I was very sensitive to, because first of all, we have to be perfect wives, we have to be perfect mothers, and we have to look really good too, and wear makeup all the time and be ultra thin. Are you kidding me? I suddenly started to realize I can't be that perfect. And when I went in to the nutritionist and said, I'm eating a 1,200 calorie a day diet, that's very healthy, she laughed in my face and said, no, you're starving yourself to be thin. And on top of that, you're eating the wrong foods in your dieting plan. She's like, give me a break. We're going to stop counting calories and start eating the proper foods, the whole foods that will make you feel better. And when you start feeling better, everything else will fall into place. I couldn't remember, I thought she was a load of bull. And I was like, oh, that's just ridiculous. She was absolutely right. And quite frankly, I look better and feel better than I have in 20 years. Okay, so this was very, very important, to stop dieting to lose weight and to start eating foods that will be a lifelong lifestyle and will be better for you. Okay, so the second, besides tracking, the other thing that I have on my phone is a yoga app. It's really cute, this little yoga app. There's this woman who's like doing, all these different forms, and then you follow her along through her forms. So if you can't afford to go out and take classes, you can certainly use an app for that. You can't afford to, have a personal food coach every single day. No worry, you can go out and get an app for that. So I feel that's free. I completely feel that this is affordable. I have to interject and say too that so many people say that eating like this is too expensive, so I'm not going to do it. That's baloney. I'm telling you, it's baloney, because I just told you, if you get chicken legs or chicken thighs instead of the ultra processed naked breast meat, the boneless, skinless breast meat, you're saving yourself a ton of money. Making your own spices and herb seasoning mixes are not expensive. I recommend organic, but if you can't go organic, you should still do it, because it still has less chemicals in it than those packages of seasoning. So it comes down to making choices where instead of having ultra processed stuff, you're coming down to the very bare ingredients. Instead of having applesauce, you're having an apple. So you can afford to go and get apples. The average American, even on the tightest financial strings, can get just the bare minimum of something. You can get ground meat or ground turkey for really inexpensive. You don't have to buy the highest cost of anything to be on this food plan. And for me, it's been remarkable. Like it's so life-changing.
And cheaper than all of the prescriptions you may have had, too. I think people forget about the long haul of how much money you actually will save without realizing it, because you're pretty much eating your medicine as in the whole food.
Exactly. I'm only on one prescription now that I take occasionally, which is a water pill. And that's when I travel, when I fly. My body reacts weirdly to the altitude issues, so occasionally I'll take a water pill. But I was on over a dozen, just a few years ago, I was on over a dozen of prescriptions a day. And if I really, really have tremendous pain, I will take an ibuprofen. Mm-hmm. I mean, what a difference from being prescribed opioids, which I would have likely been addicted to. And in fact, right now, compared to where I was when I first started, I'm in about 80% less pain. Now, remember, the condition that I have is incurable. I will always have this condition. So as I age, I will degenerate, and it is degenerative osteoarthritis. It's called that for a reason, because you gradually decline. I understand that, but imagine having 80, it used to be I had 20% wonderful and 80% horrible. Now I have it reversed. I'm 80% awesome, and I only have 20% bad days. When I have a bad day, I might have to take an ibuprofen. I might have to lay down. I might have to think that I don't have to force myself to have a horrible work day. If I'm able to take a day for myself, I do it, because I've learned that it's much better and much more therapeutic to just accept, let it all into your heart. I know I had pain today. I'm going to just accept it, and tomorrow is going to be a better day. And it works, because the better day comes and comes and comes because of that mentality. So it's that daily walking. I have to tell you too that if I'm having a really bad day, that's usually the time I need to walk the most. Everyone's like, whoa, you should just go lay down. Nope, today's the day I have to walk. And frankly, I don't like walking. Everyone's like, but you love it. It's so beautiful out. You live in Arizona now. It's fantastic. And I'm like, no, I don't really want to get up and have to exercise every day or eat a restrictive food plan or do whatever. But it makes me feel so good that it is worth the effort, and anything worth having is hard work. So this is definitely good for my soul and for my body.
I needed to talk to you today. This has been, because it's true. I know what's right for me, and we have bad days, but it's worth it to keep pushing through it, because when I do work out, I feel that much better, even just mentally. Like, it does put you in a better mood, which we all know. Yes. But it's important to take that time for yourself. And it's not about the weight loss. That's going to come with it, but it's for how you feel. And it's, I think everyone needs to check out your book, Stack with Flavor, because that was an eye opener for me. I always struggled with the spices, and I know how great things can taste. I just wasn't sure how to put them together. That's why I love my mom's vegetables, because she's really good with spices. So I would go to her house and take the vegetables that she would bake. So I think people need to do that. They need to add more walking in, or whatever form of exercise they like to do. But is there anything else you want to leave the listeners with today, or a big takeaway that you want to make sure leaving today they remember?
Well, it seems cliche, but today is the first day of the rest of your life. I want you right now to contact an integrative functional nutritionist or an integrative functional health expert who is all about looking at your total life and trying to, instead of treating the problem with Band-Aids, is trying to solve the problem specifically that you're having with food and exercise and lifestyle. It's so very, very important. If I can leave you with one thing, I want everyone to go do that. And because I remember I was the doubting Thomas and said, I hate you. This is never going to work. And look at me now. My whole life is better because I did this for myself. It's a little bit of self-care that goes a long, long way.
Yep. And I'm sure you're proud of yourself too, because you've taken control of your life as opposed to just picking up the next prescription. You've done it the healthy way, and you show with that.
Yes.
You said you felt better than you have in 20 years.
20 years.
With everything you have going on. And that's, everyone can feel that way. It's not just, oh, that worked for you, but that can't work for me. Yes, it can.
It can. It can absolutely work for you. And, so all the people that follow me on Facebook and Twitter and all the different places, please follow me out there. I am starting an integrated plan myself where I'm going to have a subscription service where I'm going to be monthly helping people live on camera, being right there like I am right now with you. We're going to be having online courses. The entire thing is, and I have to tell you, I'm so excited because before I worked in a career 100 years ago that I hated, that did nothing for anyone else and certainly didn't do anything for me. Every day I have this job where I'm an author and a wellness expert and all that. Every day I'm helping people. And so it's a bit selfish because I enjoy having a career that makes a difference. And it truly makes my heart feel glad every day that I'm talking to people. So I think I was meant to do this. I think that, if you could say it's a God thing, if it's not that, it's just the universe came together and I found what I was supposed to do in life. So my goal is really to help people, and I want to help and make a difference for the people that reach out to me. So please reach out to me. I want to make a difference for you.
So tell us again how to find you.
You can find me on my website, which is my name. It's shawnacoronado.com. And you can also find me on any social media almost, from Instagram to Twitter to Pinterest to Facebook. I'm probably most active on Instagram and Facebook. Right now, my Instagram has a lot of beautiful photos because I'm a photographer, so I'm always out taking pictures of plants and nature and what have you. But it's going to start evolving into recipes and food and ideas through the end of the season as we are promoting Stacked with Flavor, the book. And of course, you can get Stacked with Flavor. Here's what the book looks like. And you can get Stacked with Flavor at the Ogden website. My publisher is giving a 10% off deal right now. And so you can go out there and get it, or you can get it on Amazon. And I would be grateful because you're helping me send my kid to college. Mm-hmm. Always a good thing.
And so you continue to help people. It's like a win-win all over. So I love that.
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad our paths have crossed because I feel like it's, people come into my life right when I need it. And this is something I needed just to remind myself of how wonderful these foods are that I've been eating and how much better my body does feel when I'm feeding it what it needs. So thank you for helping me out today of getting me, back on track and excited. And
you got this. You can do it.
I do. I have this. So thanks again, Shawna, for coming on. And I know I'll be back in your book today, making sure I have all the spices I need for my vegetables that are already
awesome
in my fridge.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too.
We'd like to remind our audience that the views of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Bytable or of our staff personally. The purpose of the Bytable podcast is to encourage spirited dialogue around topics like food, nutrition, animal and human welfare, and the food system. Part of having an open and spirited dialogue is accepting that others have views that are different than ours and working to understand how their experiences have differed from our own. We encourage all listeners to do their own research on any and all topics discussed during the show. That being said, we hope you enjoyed the podcast, and thanks for listening.